Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions. October 17th, 1997. Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. 5,000 screaming fans are packed into the makeshift arena, the air thick with sweat and expectation. In one corner of the octagon stands a man built like a granite statue. This is Mark Kerr. He is 28 years old, 6'1", 253 pounds of solid, relentless muscle. He's a state champion, NCAA wrestling champion, world champion. He has just returned from the brutal, no-holds-barred crucible of Brazilian combat sports, where he won his last tournament with a broken hand. He took his shots, and when his hand finally gave out on him, he pummeled his opponents into submission with headbutts and knee strikes. The legends of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gave him a terrifying nickname, a máquina de bater, the smashing machine. He's huge, hulking, powerful, and absolutely intimidating. He looks, quite simply, unstoppable. A Greek god in a combat sports octagon. He doesn't walk to the center of the cage. He circles his prey. You can see from the intensity in his eyes, he has come here to crush his adversaries, to break their will, to assert his absolute dominance. His opponent is already nervously looking at the referee. The fight is over before the bell even rings. Hello, and welcome to Badass of the Week, the show where we tell the badass history of badasses. My name is Ben Thompson, and today we are going to be doing something a little different. In fact, going forward, we are going to be doing quite a few things differently. This is season 2 of our show, and I am really excited to announce to you that we are now in partnership with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Danny Garcia, and $7 Productions. We kind of felt like we needed to kick up the badassitude of the show, and we brought in the biggest badass in Hollywood to help us with that. You'll be hearing from him soon, or I guess you'll be smelling what he's cooking, which for those of you who listened to the Potemkin episode is not rancid borscht. So, okay, what does this mean? Well, this will still be a show about badass stories of characters from history. The difference now is that sometimes we might be joined by those badasses, and that is the case for us today. I really have the great honor of introducing an amazing person from history that we're going to get to talk to. Here's two-time UFC champion, Mark Kerr.
Oh, thank you, Ben, for having me. I appreciate it. I really do.
We have been doing, so I started writing Badass of the Week in 2003. So I've been doing this for like over 20 years. I've done 130 episodes of this podcast. And with all due respect to my co-host, Dr. Patricia Larish, who is a badass in her own right, this is the first time I've ever interviewed a person about their own story or talked to them about the reality of the legends. So we are breaking new ground together here today.
Which is good.
Yes.
Like Dwayne says, he's never even, biopic, the person's still alive. Usually these come out, when the person's no longer here. It's been this really cool process to be able to go, hey, Mark, what was going on here and what was going on there?
Right. I do a lot of history stuff. And in the history stories, there's always these legends. And then he did all this and all this. And there's always conflicting, maybe he didn't do all that stuff. Yeah. So it's nice to get to ask you in person.
Well, it's just good.
Okay. So let's set it up. You are a 6-time Olympic wrestling gold medalist, 2-time UFC heavyweight champion. You defeated Randy Couture for the national title. You won a tournament with a broken hand. You were known as the Smashing Machine. You were a persona that was so intimidating that opponents were sometimes broken before the bell even rang. we're going to take a really quick break for ads, and when we come back, we're going to tell the story of Mark Kerr, or actually Mark Kerr is going to tell his own story in his own words.
Yeah.
And for you longtime fans of the show, we're going to talk a little history as well, bringing up a character that some of you might recognize. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are here with Mark Kerr. So, Mark, you burst on the scene of combat sports. You're a pioneer. You're hungry. You're about to take the combat world by storm. So let's break down your ascent. So you were born in Toledo and you grew up watching WWF.
I did. I actually, WWF at the time, I remember we had this place called the Toledo Sports Arena, and it's where we had a farm team, a hockey team that played, that was a farm team for the Detroit Red Wings, I believe. And so they cleared it out, brought it in, Sergeant Slaughter, the Iranian Sheik, just that was kind of the introduction to, like, as growing up, is like, is it real? I don't know if it's real.
Yeah. At the time, nobody knew, right?
Nobody knew.
And it is like you talk to those guys and they're like, yeah, it's real. Like, well, you actually do have to lift that guy up and slam him down on the mat, and it does actually hurt when that happens.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, man. It's performative art, man. I call it like a soap opera, because that's what I mean. It has a lot of elements to it, which is really freaking hard to do.
Yes, absolutely. It's acrobatic, way more acrobatic, and they got to go out and do it every night. Like, these guys are traveling like to those places, like your arena.
Incredible. Just a different drive.
Yeah,
a different drive as a human being.
Who was your favorite wrestler?
I mean, all time, I can't help but think, besides DJ, because that's going to seem a little biased at this point.
You're required contractually to say that.
Yeah, I'm required contractually to say that for sure. But I mean, growing up in the time frame was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
You can't get away from, like, his impact on just society in general.
Yes. I was going to say the Ultimate Warrior. I was going to guess the Ultimate Warrior for you because you had that kind of like warrior mentality. But Hulk Hogan also won all the time, which is another thing that you have in common with him.
Yeah,
as a winner.
Yep. The Ultimate Warrior for sure had, he had visibility in one where it's like, but you just can't help as growing up, like the Hulkster was like it. He almost became nerdy because he was too clean.
Yes.
He's too clean. You wanted somebody that's a little bit, is going to poke him in the eye, poke him in, wanted somebody that was going to do something that was just a little bit, risky. So
yeah, break his orbital bone with your forehead.
yeah, that's another one that actually, I've done that.
Foreshadowing. That's going to come up later.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Then you get into actual wrestling, competitive. In high school, you're state champ.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. State champion. And this is what's crazy. So state champ in high school, the high school that I went to is on the east side of Toledo. It's called Wade High School. And in that high school, I think it was about 1920 something. So it's 100 plus years old. And I'm still the only state champion ever.
Wow.
From that high school.
I mean, Ohio's a big state. There's a lot of people that live there.
There's a lot of people, but you figure in 100 years of wrestling, that's been in this, that somebody else would have, and it just hasn't happened. And it's one of those where, unfortunately, it hasn't happened. There's a kid named Phoenix Contos, and he had taken 2 times. And I talked to him his junior year and I talked to him his senior year to try to give him that encouragement of, like, whether you win or lose, that's not your life.
Right.
That doesn't determine your life. It doesn't determine your life. It doesn't define you. You're so much more than that, whether you win or lose. You're going to go on to do
because it feels like that
things.
Sometimes, right? Like, it feels like, because when you're competing at that level, whole life is this, right? You're training every single day. You're competing. Like, all you're thinking is like, I got to win. You get second place in states. You're the second best. And that's like one of those things. You could wrestle that same guy 10 times. You might beat him 5, right? You just didn't beat him that time. Doesn't mean like you're a failure.
Yeah. All of that stuff. And for him to do that was just like, you don't understand how rare that is to recover from it.
You're still functioning at the top 0.001% of athletes in the world, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is exactly that. It is such a like 0.000. I mean, it's such a select club that gets to compete and be at that elite level.
Then you go to college where you continue wrestling.
Yeah, I get into collegiate wrestling, and go to college on a scholarship for to Syracuse University, and then do Olympic style freestyle wrestling, and that whole transition from wrestling. It's like you have all this skill set, but nowhere to apply it to make money.
Right, because this is different than MMA. So this is amateur, like collegiate wrestling. You've got to basically pin the guy or get a submission.
Yeah,
right? And there's no punching, no kicking, none of that kind of stuff.
No punching, no kicking, and then Olympic style, which is called freestyle wrestling. And then you have in college, which is called folk style. We're the only country in the world that has folk style wrestling, which is a whole nother story. They're a little bit different, but going from folk style collegiate wrestling to freestyle Olympic wrestling, and then it's a huge skill set you have for controlling another human being. Grabbing another human being that's your weight, your size, and you can control him. You can take him down on the ground. You can hold him down on the ground. You can turn him to his back. It's all about control. That's what wrestling is, all about controlling position and controlling a person. I define wrestling as really simple. I go, a really good wrestler can take a grown ass man and hold him in a position he doesn't want to be held for as long as he wants to hold him there. And the other guy can't do a fucking thing about it. That's a wrestler.
Yes, that's pretty badass.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty scary, really.
Yes, and you're great at it, right? Because you are wrestling in a class, which is a thing where like everybody you're facing is roughly the same weight as you. So that's not something you can use for advantage. You're not sitting on your nephew or something.
Correct. Yeah.
And you're crushing it. So you're All-American, conference champ, 89, 91, 92. That's 4 years of dominance at the highest level of amateur wrestling. You go in 1992, you go to nationals and become the NCAA national wrestling champion.
Yep.
You beat Randy Couture, who is for our listeners is
oh my God. Yeah.
Randy Couture for our listeners is a 3-time UFC champion.
Yeah. Oh my God. He's a legend. And
he's an action movie star.
Yeah. Oh my
God. He's
an
Expendables.
Yes. Oh my gosh. He developed a whole entire post-fighting career. And, I've become friends with him over the years. And just like most of us outside the ring, we're salt of the earth, man. We're good people. Inside the ring, just forget it. That's a totally different person.
Sure. And you crushed him. You beat him 12-4.
Yeah. It's just one of those where that gave me what I called empirical proof, right? Mm-hmm. That gave me proof that I was a phenomenal wrestler. Because the years before I had made it to the NCAA tournament, I was just unsuccessful. My freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, you have to qualify for the NCAA tournament every year. And so those years, I didn't even win a match. And then finally my senior year, I put it all together. And it's one of those things where it's like, that was the light bulb. That was the light bulb of confidence, that little rope of like belief or hope. And it's like, holy crap, and I can compete with anybody.
Yeah. And that, like, winning something like that is intoxicating, I imagine, too.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
That's cool. Okay. And so then you're going to push it even farther. So you join the US wrestling team, you go to the Soviet Union and compete in Moscow in 92 for the World Cup.
Yeah. Which is even crazier, because that whole thing was like an introduction to international wrestling, coming from collegiate wrestling. It's a crash course in some regards, because it's just a different style. You still have to control another person. You still have to do all this stuff. So it was one where it's like, that was a really cool introduction. And on that team is Kurt Angle.
Oh, right.
So Kurt and I started competing each other. So Kurt actually is the lead in it. He gets hurt when we're training, and they bring me over there, and I wrestle in a match. And it's just one of those things where it's like, my introduction to it is it's incredible.
And so you mentioned it's folk wrestling in college here. Is it a different style when you go to the World Cup?
It is. It's international wrestling, which is just, it's a more wide open type of wrestling. It encourages more throws of your opponent and stuff like that. And collegiate wrestling is just, it's just different. And I mean, I can spend like 2 days talking about the differences between folk style wrestling and freestyle wrestling, but the essence of it, it's still control. It's still, that type of thing. It just has different rules.
But now you're like you're representing the United States, right? You've got to change fighting styles, compete with a whole other group of people that you've got to deal with. You got to go there. You got to
Absolutely.
You've got to hip throw Ivan Drago in the Soviet Union now.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you get second in Moscow. You go back in Edmonton a year or two later, and you win the World Cup.
Yeah.
So you're like literally the best wrestler in the world at your weight class. Then like kind of you're done with college, you're college champion, world champion. And, you know, like you said, there's not a lot of ways to make money with wrestling, but so when you get done, your options are go to WWF, do whatever it was you studied at Syracuse, but you decide you're going to go into underground cage fighting.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's brilliant. Right. College educated, high level, high competing, and I'm going to go. Part of it was, in 1996, didn't make the Olympic team, watched Kurt Angle win the Olympic gold medal. My mom's got terminal cancer right after the Olympics. When Kurt won, she passes away. I'm the youngest of 5 kids.
Oh, wow.
And, just had this devastation. It felt like, like I had this, fuck it mentality. And I go, okay, what am I going to do? I just got through 4 years of an Olympic training cycle. Right. My other friends like Mark Coleman, he's fighting in the UFC. He's making money, I'll go. Yeah. And so that was kind of okay, let's just see what it is, but not understanding what I was stepping into. The fights down in Brazil, they were like otherworldly.
So
they were right out.
I want to talk about this. So yeah, it's you skip the octagon, you go to World Vale Tudo, which we need to spell this out for listeners because we shouldn't expect like a level of like our listeners to be fully juiced in on the underground combat sports. Vale Tudo is a Brazilian Portuguese word that literally means anything goes. So there's very few rules, no weight classes, no rounds, no time limits. You can like knee strike people, you can headbutt people. It's like the only thing missing is a broken off beer bottle and a switchblade.
Pretty much. I mean, it's right out of the WWE. I needed a folding chair right in my corner, right? I mean, I needed something, but understanding like I never even looked up what Vale Tudo meant. I just did. He's like, the guy that was training me, just like, hey, we're going to go down. And, if you win that night, they'll pay you 25 grand cash. I'm like, oh, okay. That past year competing full time, I think with coaching, wrestling, sponsorships, all of that, I think it was like I made $22,000 that whole calendar year. Yeah. Training for the Olympics. And it was like 25 grand one. Okay. I got, I'm in.
It's one night, right? For a whole year in one night.
Yeah.
So you go to Sao Paulo, you're fighting in like a hotel basement. You demolish everybody. In the semis, you break your hand pummeling Mr. Hulk, who is famous who was Brazilian famous for like training the Brazilian special forces in capoeira. And you defeat him, break your hand. Then you have to go up against world jiu-jitsu champion Fabio Gurgel in the finals. Yeah. And Mark, I've never actually smashed anybody before, but I assume that smashing people requires 2 functional hands. Is that not the case?
It does. It does. I ended up like with your hands, bare knuckles. So the fights are bare knuckles. So you end up.
Oh
with
God! They're not even the little
hands.
UFC gloves.
No, not the little 4-ounce gloves. Man. Nothing. So you can only tape them to just before your knuckles, so the tape was useless. It was just more of a hindrance than it was anything else. But when you hit,
it's like Bloodsport. It's like the Van Damme movie or like Mortal Kombat or something.
Oh, it is. You could have a movie could be made about this.
Yeah, kidding.
It's right out of like central casting, this whole entire setup. And so, your knuckles, when you punch them and hit somebody in the head, they pop like bubble wrap. And when they pop like bubble wrap, they hemorrhage into the joint. And so your knuckles fill up with blood. And so when you're punching like that I don't have the best accuracy at this point in my career. So you're just punching to try to just make contact to let them know that I'm not going to stop until you quit.
You never
and
fought
so
like this before. This is your first experience fighting in this style, right?
Ever. Oh my God, man. First time ever. And part of that feeling is like, I didn't know how I was going to react, what I was going to do, what kind of primal thing was going to kick in. I had no clue. Like it's a question I always say, like in my life, for whatever reason, the question I hadn't answered yet was, if I was put into a room with another person and somebody said, one of you need to come out, would I be able to be the one that came out? And that question just kind of lingered in my head for whatever reason. And it's one where it's like, well, this definitively answered it.
Now you know.
I know that if you put me in a room with another human being, that I can impose my will upon him to the point where he gives me his. And that's the question I was trying to answer. So when I fought Fabio, man, my hands are all bloody, my knuckles broken, my hands all messed up, and it turned into just this melee.
Yeah, you headbutted him for 30 minutes until the refs finally stopped the fight, which they never do.
Yeah,
like 30 minutes is an insane amount of time for a boxing match or a wrestling match.
God. It's beyond eternity because it doesn't have a break. There isn't like a ding between rounds. It wasn't like 3-minute rounds or 5-minute rounds. It was a continuation all the way through. There were a couple points where we were tied up in the ropes and they pulled us back in. That was a rest point, but that's about it.
Yeah,
that's about it.
So you smash everybody, and the Brazilians are so impressed by your performance that they give you a nickname. They call you a máquina de bater, which means the smashing machine.
Yeah,
and like, I do a lot of history stuff, and there's some very cool epithets and nicknames in history. Some of them are not that good. There's a Bulgarian guy called Ivailo the Cabbage. He's called the Cabbage because he was like a farmer, but he defeats the king in a battle. He's badass, but he's called the Cabbage. The Smashing Machine is a good nickname.
I always say with nicknames, they're one of those things that you can't give yourself. Somebody else, it comes from somewhere else. Like I can't one day wake and go like, yeah, I'm the ass kicker. It's like people like, all right, I gave it to myself. Like that doesn't apply.
Yes.
Like somebody has to observe something and go, oh my God, that is an ass kicker. That's the guy.
Fighter pilots don't get to pick their nicknames, right? They don't get to pick the name on their helmet. They got to be assigned it. You have to change your name legally, like Chad Ochocinco or something, if you want to have.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Okay, so you're the Vale Tudo champion. You're the Smashing Machine. You go in 1997. You come back to the U.S. and you fight in UFC 14. And UFCs are like a big deal now, right? They're these huge pay-per-view events. People get together at bars and stuff to watch them. But at the time, it's a smaller market.
Oh, incredibly small. I mean, it's just one where it's like the last UFC event that I did, number 15. Was in a parking lot of a casino. I believe it was in Mississippi.
Oh, geez.
And it was a tent, like a circus tent.
Wow.
Like stakes in the asphalt to hold it up. And they had trailers outside as your locker room. And that was the event. It was just one of those things, like the contrast to where it is now, like having an event at the Sphere in Vegas. Right. And a parking lot in Mississippi, so, what we were doing was still like walking on the moon. It was like this pioneering, don't exactly know what it is. But my participation in that, it took me, for me to reflect back on it, what I was trying to do, I was trying to change the narrative of what we were, because everybody looked at us like we were just dudes that were sitting on a bar stool. Some guy came in and said, hey, I'll give you $50 if you go fight that guy next to you. And then the guys are like, okay. And they go out and there's an octagon, they get in it and they fight, and the guy gets $50 and they walk on.
Right. But
I was trying to change that narrative.
And you did, right? So people would come to watch you because you kind of take this by storm. So at UFC 14, you get a chance to compete for the heavyweight title. And we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about that night. Okay, welcome back. I am here with Mark Kerr. And Mark, we were talking about how you had the chance to compete in UFC 14, and it's going to be for the title. But at the time, the format is a little different than it is today. In order to get the championship, you had to win 2 fights in the same night, which is insane to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just like any of that stuff could not exist now. It just the caliber of fighter is so much better. And, the thing that, back then, you could get, I call them goldfish and sharks. You can get a top level guy that understands what he's doing, and you can get he's a shark. The other guy is just, trying to figure out if he can do it. And so now you can't have that, because you have a lot more filters that actually get the guys that can compete, and they're professionals. And that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to raise the level of what the perception was. So I was trying to bring, I dressed like a professional, I trained like a professional, I talked like a professional. When I got in the octagon, I was professional. I executed. I was, that's what I was trying to do, because I wanted to be paid like a professional. I was trying to get to that point.
Right. You're kind of pioneering, you're kind of paving the road as you're driving on it
exactly.
MMA.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you win UFC 14, you go back a couple months later to UFC 15, you have to fight 2 fights again that same night. You win the first one, you knee strike your opponent unconscious 17 seconds into the fight. Yeah. And then you get the second guy to tap out from a submission hold after 53 seconds. So you've won both your fights, and like people are still waiting for their popcorn to come out of the microwave.
They are. Yeah.
How were you able to beat these guys so quickly? Like, what was it? Was it just,
a lot of it back then, so again, one of the other things I was trying to dispel is the myth of like, oh, you're, 10th degree black belt, you're the toughest guy. You're 6'9", 400 pounds. You're the toughest guy. So I think even back then, some of the guys that stepped in the ring, like Ranger Stott and the other guy, Dwayne, and, they were still under the spell of like big dudes. Even though I was a big dude and I knew what I was doing and I could hurt them, it helped because it created fear. Like they'd look at me like, holy shit, because I just had this imposing physical presence where you looked at me and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do with him?
Right. Right.
And so that helped, because it was easy to, I call it, David Goggins called it soul taking, and I just call it just straight up will taking. Like I'm there to take your will, period.
Yes.
And they gave it pretty easy.
Yeah. So this is a good transition, because I'm a history guy, and we did an episode a while back on a character that I feel like has a lot of parallels to you. So I want to kind of talk to you for a second about, he was named Milo of Crotone, and he was an ancient Greek guy. So he was a 6-time Olympic champion in Greco-Roman wrestling. And this is like the old days, like Athens and Sparta and all of that. So they were still doing the Olympics every 4 years. So he's the champ for like 24 years.
Wow.
They have games in between, like they call it the Pythian Games. They did them every 2 years. He wins all those. He's like the greatest. I think he still has the record for the most wrestling gold medals by a single person. And he's doing this in like the year 400 or something wild like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So he had a training thing that he would do. And this is another one of these, we need to talk to the legends to get the real story. But the story goes, he would win an Olympics, and he had this ranch out behind his house, and he'd go out the next day and he'd pick up this little baby cow. Yeah, little baby bull. And he'd carry it around. And then the next day he'd come back and pick it up and carry it again. The next day he'd pick it up and carry it again. 4 years later, it's this giant ox or whatever.
Yeah.
He'd pick it up. And then they do the like opening ceremonies for the Olympics, and he'd carry the ox into the stadium and like throw it down in front of the Olympic flame, and then sacrifice it to the gods right there. That's like good luck for your for the Olympics.
Yeah.
You ever do anything like that?
This is what's crazy about this conversation. So in 1996. Right before the Freestyle Nationals, I had a trip to Athens, Greece to wrestle. And when I was in Athens, I went to the Parthenon, and the Parthenon has a museum. And in the museum, I have a picture of the sculpture of Milo.
Oh, no kidding.
And yeah. And it's the saying that the tour guide gave is like, as a bull got bigger, I got stronger.
Right. It's like gradual training or whatever they call
gradual
it.
training, right? So that whole entire thing is this. I have this picture. It's one of my favorite pictures of
That's so
the
cool.
sculpture of him with just holding the front legs and holding the back legs and his baby bull around his neck. And I loved it. It's like still to this day, one of my favorite pictures I ever took. And it's
so
that
cool.
saying of like, because it's the parallel for me is that like, as life gets harder, which it does at times, I get stronger because of it. Instead of cursing those things, right? I embrace them because at the end of the day, those are the things that actually, when I get through, I can reflect on and go, wow, man, that's what I needed to get me to where I am.
Right.
So that whole idea of like, what's a curse and what's a blessing? I don't know. But what I do know, it's life.
Right. I love that. And so that's like, his story actually gets kind of weird too, because at one point he's living in the same city as Pythagoras, who's the guy with the area of a triangle, the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras is this math guy that lives there. He's got this big group of math people that are with him. They're doing math and astronomy. They're doing music stuff. And Milo gets really involved in Pythagoras's group. And he has this like really cerebral component to him. And I feel like that's something that's required for what you've been doing, because you're changing formats over and over again, right? You're doing folk style wrestling, you're doing international wrestling, then you're going Vale Tudo, then you're going UFC, you do Pride, that has different rules. You go back to Abu Dhabi, you compete in the Abu Dhabi submission wrestling, which is like totally different style of wrestling.
Animal.
Right. You win that 13-0. You win 4 gold medals over 3 years. You don't lose. But you're switching all these styles and you're fighting against guys who are using different styles against you that you're going to counter a striker very differently than you're going to counter a guy who wants to get you on the ground. So there's a lot of cerebral component to what you're doing, right?
Huge components to it. I mean, it's just one of those where, I say this, and I've heard other, when you're watching a UFC fight, it's like watching a live chess match.
I think so, right? Because I don't know a lot of the strategy of it, but it just, a lot of times when you start to really get into a sport, you learn that there's so much more happening. This isn't, like you said, 2 guys in a bar fight, beating each other up.
Man.
There's so much happening here.
No. Oh my God. It's so technical. It's so technical, the stuff they do. And they have to hardwire it in them. Like the whole training process hardwires these reactions to that. And that's what you're watching. You're watching the training process they went through. It's hardwired into reactions, and they get in the ring, and those reactions better be right on to what's going on. And I watch it and I go like, wow, these little things that some of the top guys have that nobody else has. This ability to pick up on little tells, this ability to, look at certain things instantly, and their body processes it and their mind processes it, and then it computes and then they execute it. Which is just the I feel like
that's really what sets apart, because at a certain point, everybody's the same size, they're the same strength for the most part, right? And so the thing that's going to set you apart is identifying what the other guy's doing before he can figure out what you're doing.
Chess match. It's just like in chess, you're trying to be 2 or 3 moves in front of what the other guy's trying to think. But the really good ones are 50 moves in front of everybody, right?
But you've lost before you've even started. It's the Sherlock Holmes thing from that movie where they're thinking about what they're going to do before they've even started.
yeah, exactly. And it's that type when you watch the high level guys do it. It's just there's something completely different in them that the other guy just doesn't have, and. It's incredible because me doing it, I thought I was at a high level in the evolution of an MMA fighter from 2005 to where we are now in 20 years is incredible.
Right. But you helped bring that in, right? Because you are bringing the cerebral component to early MMA, to early UFC. Like you're showing up and you're operating on a different level than the rest of the competition, as everybody shown by how quickly you're winning all of these. And so people wanted to hang, people are watching you perform. People want to kind of emulate you, and people are thinking, if we want to compete at this level, we got to step our game up. And I feel like that's really effective.
Well, that's what part of Abu Dhabi was. That's why I even did it, because I had to represent to them, like I had to represent wrestling. I had to go, okay, you guys doing your jiu-jitsu stuff, all that stuff, that's great, sambo, blah, blah, blah. But foundationally, here's what you need. And
Yeah.
it's even more relevant now than it's ever been, because you look at some of the high level guys now and you go, oh my God, man, they are just dismantling. Oh, he's a wrestler. That's why. It's just,
Technical.
it's a complete technically different in a way that the other guys aren't.
Right. It's what you said about moving the guy around. If you can move him around into a spot, like maybe, that's a big part of fighting, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible, because you end up, you really, like you're talking about, this cerebral approach to it, and this very analytical and looking at it. And it's these micro moves and chess moves and all this stuff. It's like, looking at it now going, wow, man, it just is. I have such an appreciation for it, because on the other side of it, I know how freaking hard it is. It's incredibly difficult to compete at that level. Not only to compete at that level, but to be successful at that level.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
And so let's keep going with Milo's story, because he is in this Pythagorean group, and the Pythagoras is making other people mad. So he's Greek, but he's in Croton's in Italy. So there's this other, like this couple neighboring city-states get annoyed at Pythagoras, and they send an army to attack Croton. And this army is arrayed outside of Croton. They're getting ready to attack. The army of Croton comes out from the city walls, and at the head of that army is Milo, dressed up like Hercules. And the guys in the other army are like, and he's like a superstar. He's the most successful combat athlete in the world. And these guys on the other army are just like, dude, we seriously have to fight him? Like, he's going to attack us. Oh my God. And a bunch of them run away and don't want to be in the fight. So the fight happens. Milo still has to lead his army to victory. They destroy the enemy, but they won before they started. And for me, that's also kind of the smashing machine persona, what you were talking about. Walk out there and like you want to win that fight before it's even started.
Yeah, you have so this goes to primal, right? Like I didn't understand it completely until probably my second event fighting, so probably UFC 14, when it was just those short fights, and I could feel, like, from the other person, what vibe they were given, what energy they were given, what thing they were given. I could smell, I could sense, so that physical intimidation, that, like, it's like, it's a completely real thing. Like when you're in that environment, I can feel that person just nervous and afraid and fearful. And that was half the battle. It's just like, oh, dude, like in my head, it's like, you're going to give me your will to win and I'm going to take it. Oh, man.
Blood in the water.
Yeah. Oh, blood in the water is right. I mean, because it's this primal thing that you pick up on when you click that switch and you go to that mode. It's an incredibly, privileged. I didn't understand what a privilege it was to feel that, and to understand that, or sit in that feeling and go, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
This is in my DNA. It's in my DNA. It's part of who I am.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's amazing. So, okay. So let me finish Milo's story here, because we're on this arc here. So Milo is unbeatable, right? He's the greatest fighter that has lived. He's got 2 decades of dominance. He never loses. He loses in the Olympics. His 7th Olympics, he loses. Not by much, but he does. And then, he's on the downswing of his career, and he meets his end. He's in the forest. He's doing some like yard work or something. He's in the forest, and he's trying to pull a tree stump out of the ground with his bare hands. And this is how the myth goes, right? He's trying to pull a tree stump out of the ground with his bare hands, and like it kind of opens up, and then it snaps shut on his hand, and he gets his hand stuck in the tree stump. And he doesn't, somebody's like, you need help? He's like, no, I got this. I can pull it out. Earlier in his career, maybe he could have ripped this tree stump out, but now he's on the downswing. He can't. His hand gets stuck. He's left there overnight. And while he's waiting for the sunrise, wolves come and attack him. And he's fighting off these wolves one-handed, like you at Valley Tudo. He kills 3 or 4 wolves, but then the pack gets him and they kill him.
Oh my God.
That's how Milo meets his end. And
Wow.
you faced a pack of wolves as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of metaphors in there. There's a lot, there's a lot of metaphors in there. The pack of wolves was some of the stuff that was going on, that I shouldn't have been doing. It's
Right.
like, the opiate addiction and stuff like that. That's the eventual thing that it brought me down, but it also in that humbling me, it helped get me to where I am today. Because it's humbling, like any kind of addiction is if you don't deal with it, you'll in walk out of it with a sense of humility. Because the arrogance of like, oh, I got this, I can overcome this, don't worry about it, like hand trapped in the stump, I got it.
They ask me if he needs help. He
I'm
says
good.
no, right?
I'm good, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the reality is in that moment, I really did need to ask for help. I really did need to reach out. And part of that is that I didn't, and so, through that process of really trying to understand, who I was and all that stuff, the wolves came and got me because I just didn't ask for the help in those moments I needed to ask for help.
Right. But here's the thing, Mark. You're not Milo of Crotone. You don't get killed by the wolves. You defeat them. You win. You beat the wolves, right? That's not the end of your story, right? You're sitting here talking to me.
I know.
And that's kind of the moral of badass of the week, right? Like people who faced adversity and then you overcome it.
Yeah,
so what was that like? What was the thing that kind of helped you turn it around?
Part of what I understand about myself is that in the moment you don't see the clarity of it, like me falling flat on my face, taking a face plant, getting up and dusting myself off and trying again. I always would say, like, I don't want the guy that just won the championship. I want to talk to the guy that just got the shit kicked out of him and then finds out he has it in him to try again.
Yes.
That's the constitution of the person that I want. Like, what is it? Where does that drive come from? Where does that sense of like, okay, this was the lesson I needed to learn to get me to where I needed to go. And part of everything that I went through, at the time I might have felt like it was a curse or like, like, why am I going through this? And, I stopped asking why. I stopped in the process of like, why is this happening? It's like the why doesn't matter because it's happening. So just, I've developed the constitution to just get through the things I need to get through and enjoy the things I can enjoy. And that's life. It's just
Right.
the process of living, which people don't understand. Like life didn't owe me anything and it still doesn't. To this point, life has given me more than I could ever ask. And I would never ask anything more of it. Everything that's come from here going forward has been such a blessing. It really has.
Right. Yeah. You hit this wall and you get knocked down, you get back up again, right? The person who wins all the time, it's not as interesting because they don't face adversity, or at least not on that level, right?
No.
It's you get knocked down, you get back up again.
No. And the other part too is that, anybody that's ever trained with me, I said, hey, listen, the one thing I do know, getting there, that's one thing. Staying there, that's a completely different animal. So that somebody that stacks championship after like Milo, you win freaking six Olympic cycles you go through and you win a gold medal. That's stacking. That's like figuring out a formula for longevity that nobody else has.
Right. But then at some point that ends, right? You can't win every tournament forever.
It does.
Right. That's
it
sports.
Does.
And so, but it's facing that adversity and persevering through it, keep going. Like that's kind of the spirit of badass.
It's a huge part of it. I mean, adversity is just, it's part of what life is. And I think sometimes, people out there think that life owes them something, and that entitlement. Like I had an attitude for a long time of entitlement. At moments and times I was like, I deserve that. Like nobody deserves anything. It's what I work towards and I earn, and I have to have a certain reverence and respect for it. And that has given me the fulfillment and gratitude that I've needed.
Mhm.
It's been this incredible journey. I can't even imagine. I couldn't even imagine this coming. This is like a total blindside.
Right. I mean, now like you get inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame in June. You've got The Rock playing you in a movie now.
Oh my
Like,
God.
that must feel pretty good to come back and like have from being stuck in the tree stump fighting wolves to
Yeah,
like
oh
doing
my
this now. Like
gosh, yeah.
that's got to feel good.
Oh my gosh. I was talking with Dwayne about this yesterday. I said, the crazy thing is, I didn't know, like, I still had a little hole in me. I still had this little hole that I was trying to fill up with other things, right? And then the
Mhm.
Hall of Fame, for whatever reason, that closed that hole. I said I didn't know
Yeah.
I needed that. I had no idea that I needed that validation or recognition. And it felt like I was coming home. It felt like the complete redemption happened in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And so if for our listeners, your speech was very powerful at the Hall of Fame. I recommend people go and listen to that. It's definitely
Thank you.
definitely worth listening to.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for coming and talking to me. Now, when I do these episodes, usually I like to end by asking kind of what's the takeaway from this story. So what's a lesson that aspiring badasses or people who are trying to overcome their own personal battles can learn from the story of Mark Kerr? Like, how does your story help people conquer their own worlds?
Um, you're gonna fail. I just tell them that's life. You're
Yep.
you're gonna face plant. You're gonna fail, and those moments in time where things seem hopeless. That's where I drew a lot of my constitution of like, you know, I need to get up. I need to get up and keep going and keep moving forward. And, part of that's in this and the smashing machine and, my story is like, if you face plant, get up, man. Nobody's judging you except yourself,
Mhm.
and having the fortitude to, get through some of these obstacles or difficulties in life. That's the stuff that you look back on and go, oh my God, man, I made it through that. Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm on the other side of it.
Yeah. The advice you gave to
It's
Phoenix,
this,
right? Just
yeah,
keep going,
yeah.
right? Don't let this define you.
Keep going. Because not a single thing in my life is ever going to define me. At the end of my life, it's the totality of a bunch of little decisions, little things that I've done that'll tell a story of who I am. But one thing in my life, it's not who I am. It doesn't define who I am.
Mhm.
And, I think people, watching the Smashing Machine or listening to this and, understanding that, you know, uh, on the other side of it too, when you get in a tough spot, sometimes you do need to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
do. You need to reach out. And, a lot of what kept me trapped for a long time is the shame. And there's no shame in asking for help. No
It's
shame
the thing
at
that
all.
comes up a lot. So I do a lot of stories of war heroes and, warriors from history and things. And they'll go out and they'll have these great epic battles. They'll earn the Medal of Honor, stuff like that. But then they'll come back and they'll have a hard time, right? Being a badass doesn't necessarily equate to happiness with your life. But,
Yeah.
sometimes you do have to ask for help. And I think that that's a really important message.
I mean, it's what I discovered about myself is that that's where my strength comes from. Admitting what my weaknesses are and then trying to figure out how to make myself better from them.
Mm-hmm.
All the different things that, everybody goes through, they're just part of life, and having the ability to ask for help and connect with somebody that can help you. That's the miracle of my life. It really is, being able to connect with other human beings and understand that connection, is the ability, or that connection is what I've been looking for my whole life.
Right. Mark, it's been an honor talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on here to tell your story. It's really amazing to get to hear it firsthand.
I appreciate it. And, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm grateful to be able to do this kind of stuff. I love doing this.
Aside from the movie Smashing Machine, which is out now, where else can people find you if they want to learn more or
So
see more of your stuff?
just real simple. I mean, Instagram, TMS, The Smashing Machine. So Mark Kerr, TMS, The Smashing Machine. I have a website, markkerr.com. And my wife has a website, Absolute Wellness. I'm in the wellness space with my wife. Her and I design, she designs, I say I do, but she's the one that designs like fitness centers, amenity spaces,
Oh, cool.
recovery spaces, she's been doing it for like 23, 24 years,
Wow.
so she's a rock star, she develops all kinds of fitness centers for multifamily, for municipalities, master plan communities, and, gets all the equipment, sells them all the equipment and stuff. So,
Very cool. What was the name of the
if
site
anybody
again?
needs any of this, it's called Absolute Wellness.
Absolute Wellness. Okay.
And so we'll have Absolute Performance is another part of it, stuff like that. So we're trying to figure out how to get tools to people like that need help.
Mhm.
It's like that need, a bunch of different stuff. So there's different components to wellness, and everyone defines it themselves.
Right. Definitely. That makes total sense. Okay. Thank you so much, Mark Kerr, the Smashing Machine, for joining us. Thank you all for listening to the story. We do tell stories of badasses from history and occasionally get to talk to some. So that's pretty cool. Thank you so much. Please do like it.
I appreciate it, Ben.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mark. It was great having you on here. And thank you to all of you out there listening. We really hope you like this episode, and we really appreciate you guys listening to it. We are super excited to welcome Dwayne Johnson and the $7 team to the Badass of the Week family. And we're going to be doing some really cool stuff. We can't wait to tell you about it. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed the episode. And please leave us a review because it actually does help us out a lot. And also check out our Patreon page if you want to support us. It's kind of up and coming, but there's going to be some really cool stuff on there soon. And as always, stay badass. Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions. Executive producers are Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia, Andrew Jacobs, Hiram Garcia, Brian Gewirtz, Frankie Chaparino, and of course, me, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and my semi-regular but always awesome co-host, Dr. Patricia Larish. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Our mixing, music, and sound design is done by the incomparable Jude Brewer. Production support by Jean McHale-Waite. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, tell your friends, and tell your enemies. And please leave us a review. If you want to support Badass of the Week, please check out our Patreon page. We'll be back next week with another one. Mark Kerr doesn't skip leg day. Leg day skips Mark Kerr.